YouTube, it's Eric. I'm going to try to keep this video fairly short, but I am going to be reading to you from Theodore Greisinger's book, The History of the Jesuits, on some background history on Guy Fawkes. But I'm just going to show you in this video, like the proof is in the symbolism of Anonymous. I'm going to show you that Anonymous official here that with 2 million subscribers here is actually, I think, a CIA Jesuit run intelligence operation. The reason they don't show their face and the reason they stay quote unquote anonymous is because they're actually working for the power structure. They're working for the intelligence agencies, they're working for the government, they're working for the Vatican, etc. And that's why when you do a quick stroll through the anonymous feed, there's nothing on the Vatican on this whole channel. It's all fear porn, actually. The whole thing is fear porn. I was just watching one of these videos. I was watching a video called Anonymous, the Reptilian Agenda Exposed. Anonymous is posting all the fake news, all the fear porn, all the reptilian stuff. Um, you know what? So you see here, guys, clearly there's nothing on the Roman Empire. There's nothing on how Donald Trump really went to Jesuit Fordham University and that Trump's sister donated millions to Fairfield Jesuit University. They're getting you to. They attack the Jew George Soros quite a bit, just like any Catholic intelligence operation would, disinfo operation. But here, look. You notice anything in the anonymous logo, guys? Just look at the logo a little. Take a little extra glance at it, and if you're watching, if you're in the video, tell me if you notice what's on the logo. Okay, look at that. Look what my mouse is doing. It's a Roman reef right there. Okay, I'm gonna type it in if you're coming into the chat. Give me a second. And so you see it, guys, there's a Roman reef right in the anonymous logo. Let alone, guys, that you'll see here. I'm gonna show you the real history of this Guy Fawkes. But Anonymous wears the Guy Fawkes mask, which in reality, Guy Fawkes was a Catholic terrorist who was responsible, one of the co-conspirators of the Gunpowder Plot. So they wear a mask of a Catholic terrorist, and they have a Catholic Roman reef right in their logo. And look at this, guys. This just proves to me that like it's the CIA Jesuit intelligence operation. They have a question mark over the head of the unhead over the suit over you see in the middle of like the sphere here there's a question mark, okay, with the Roman reef underneath. That this is just proof, okay? That question mark is the CIA and the Jesuit intelligence operations that are running anonymous, okay? um, and even in the game Grand Theft Auto, it's the same thing. The Roman reef is in the logo in anonymous in Grand Theft Auto. The same thing with the question mark, okay? And they wear the Catholic Guy Fawkes mask. And you guys notice something like I've covered Georgetown University a lot on my channel. Look what Georgetown University has in their logo too, guys. See that? Georgetown University has the Roman reef right underneath. Okay, guys, Altruc unum in Latin, both together, merging church and state with the cross and the earth. Okay, Georgetown with the Roman reef. Same anonymous that has the Roman reef. Okay, they're working with Georgetown University, guys. It's right in the symbolism. Okay, the United Nations. There's so many other logos with the Roman reef, but the United Nations logo, it's the same symbolism, guys. The Anonymous is working with the United Nations. It's right in the symbols. Okay, guys. They always say they let those know who have the eyes to see. Okay, it's right there. Okay. Roman Reef, Georgetown University, Roman Reef, United Nations, Roman Reef, Anonymous. Okay, and Anonymous promotes the Guy Fawkes masks right here. And even it's on Wikipedia's like on his Wikipedia page here, Guy Fawkes, also known as Guido Fawkes, name he adopted while fighting for the Spanish, was a member of a group of provincial English Catholics. I repeat, Guy Fawkes was a member of a group of English provincial Catholics who planned the failed Gunpowder Plot of 1605. Okay. Fox converted to Catholicism and left for mainland Europe, where he fought in the 80 Years' War on the side of Catholic Spain against the Protestant Dutch reformers in the Low Countries. This guy's a full-on Catholic soldier here, Guy Fawkes. Okay, and I'm gonna be reading to you a little bit out of Theodore Greisinger's book here, history of the Jesuits. I'm not going to read the full chapter because it'll take too long. It's like 30 pages in the chapter. I recommend you check out the full chapter. I'm just going to read to you some information on Guy Fawkes. Um, so the inspiration for the Gunpowder Plot was let me see here. James declared at the same time, on the advice of his influential minister Robert Cecil, Earl of Salisbury, that England should remain now, as before, closed against the Jesuits, and that no change should be made against them regard to the ordinances of the Protestant Queen Elizabeth. From this, the monarch James would not allow himself to be afterwards diverted, and indeed principally on the ground that from his quiet temperament he was above everything, a lover of peace, while he was firmly convinced that he might ward off insurrections and disturbances from his kingdom by keeping the Jesuits at a distance. That was indeed a severe blow to the calculations of the Jesuits, and even on this account their rage knew no bounds. They therefore resolved to revenge themselves in such a way as never heard before in the history of the world. They determined to annihilate the king with his whole family, together with the entire heads of Protestantism in England at one blow. And this is what Guy Fawkes is about. This is what V for Vendetta, the movie, is. It's getting you to sympathize with the Catholic terrorist and getting you to put on the mask of a Catholic terrorist and to think that you're actually being a voice for truth when you're actually being a voice for Catholicism. Before everything on this account, it became a question to form a party in England who might take advantage of the confusion caused by the first great scene of murder, in order with the arms in their hands to overthrow the Protestants. Consequently, a pretender to the throne must first of all be found, who, in addition to his devotion to Catholicism, might have the appearance of having right on his side. Lastly, the men had to be discovered who were fit to bring a conclusion so formidable an undertaking as that which was in contemplation, and such men were indeed not to be picked up in the streets. A great and difficult task thus lay before them, yes, indeed, a very great and difficult one, and on this account it was resolved that the chief or director of the Anglo-Jesuit affairs, the provincial Henry Garnet, should proceed himself in person to the scene of operations, accompanied by several members selected with the greatest care, and it was desired to avoid at all hazards the chance of any misadventure taking place. And I linked this in Wikipedia, but this was the Jesuit that was actually responsible for the whole plotting of the Gunpowder Plot. You see Henry Garnet, Society of Jesus. He was the English Jesuit priest, and he was eventually executed for his complicity in the Gunpowder Plot. Okay, so check out his Wikipedia page there. You see here, Anonymous is putting on the mask of Guy Fawkes. You see they're completely controlled, and they have the Roman reef in their logo, just like Georgetown University and the United Nations, and so many other big-time organizations. Garnet himself, therefore, chose his people, among whom were especially remarkable Fathers Oswald Tesmond, Jesuit John Gerard, and P. Oldercone, took his departure for the British Islands. They did not, however, travel in company, but singly, in order not to arouse observation. Neither they did journey in Jesuit attire, or even under their own names, but one gave himself out as a merchant, another as a mechanic, and a third and fourth as soldiers, or whatever else they chose. And as regards to their names, Oldercone called himself Hall, Gerard today Brooke, and tomorrow Lee. Tesmond was named Greenwall, and as well as Greenwood, and Garnet too was at one time Wally, and at another Darcy, and at another Roberts, and at another Farmer, and at another Henry, and at another Phillips. So, so this Jesuit Henry Garnet here had like 7 identities, false identities that he was using in England to hide his nefarious activities. Having arrived in England, they betook themselves to those Catholics who had been previously pointed out by their spies as being the most zealous, and received from them in turn the addresses of other families who might be trusted as regards to political matters. They thus by degrees visited the whole of those persons in England who still adhered to the Catholic persuasion. Before Protestants, however, they acted as the most zealous Puritans, but everywhere they taught that a king devoted to heresy could never be a proper monarch, nor could he demand the obedience of his subjects. To this, however, they added that King James I was not of legitimate birth, or at all events was a great doubt about it, and consequently that it would be a most serviceable work in every respect to get rid of him as a heretic and a usurper. The sons of Loyola, however, did not remain satisfied merely with this, but pointed out the individual alone had a right to the English throne in the person of Arabella Stuart, the daughter of the Earl of Lennox, who was a direct descendant of King Henry VII. The beautiful Arabella was too prepared to accept the crown at the hands of the Jesuits, and it was only therefore requisite that the throne should become vacant in order that the Jesuit candidate should be enabled to ascend to it. In other words, it now only remained for them to find the proper men in order to remove from the world King James with his whole family and the heads of the Protestant party. With this, the most difficult portion of this most difficult problem still remained to be solved. It was solved, however, up to a certain point, and certainly such a way as to entitle the sons of Loyola to all credit. Provincial Garnet, Jesuit Garnet, had previously made the acquaintance of the continent of Robert Catesby, a good English Catholic, and at the same time a nobleman of a family of consideration. And this Catesby was not having at the time attained a sufficiently high position in the state, was from an ambition not disinclined to disturb the order of things in England. It was to him, therefore, that Jesuit Garnet, applied on his arrival to the British Islands, and their secret conversation soon brought it about that the nobleman declared himself ready to carry out the frightfully daring deed required of him. He was not, however, by himself equal to the task, so it was requisite that he should obtain several accomplices whose iron will, as well as whose strength and courage, could be depended upon no less than their absolute secrecy and their enthusiasm for the matter of hand. You see here, I'm just going to show Guy Fawkes is in this book here, who the Anonymous used as a mask. They used the Guy Fawkes mask, a Spanish Catholic terrorist. Consequently, it was necessary to be most circumspect in the selection, and as Catesby always took counsel with Garnet and the other above-named Jesuits before he made the first communications to a new conspirator, or even indeed took steps to secure one, it was well into the year 1604 before the requisite number was complete. The names of these were as follows: Thomas Percy, a young profligate with spendthrift but bold to even rashness, from the celebrated family of the Earls of Northumberland. There was Thomas and Robert Winter, two brothers who had suffered much from the persecution under the government of Protestant Elizabeth on the account of their Catholic faith. See here, guys, the champion of Anonymous, the Jesuit CIA operation, Guy Fawkes, was chosen by Jesuit Garnet. Guy Fawkes, a wild soldier, formerly an officer in the Spanish service, whose well scared face bore evidence of his former deeds. Then there's Francis Treshman and Ambrose Rockwood, both of noble blood and intimate friends of the Catesby. There's Edward Digby, a man of considerable means and great talents, who felt himself aggrieved as a Catholic at the neglect of the faith. Robert Keyes was chosen, Christopher Wright and John Grant, all affected with similar ambition. Lastly, Tom Bates, only indeed a servant of Catesby, but remarkably sagacious and daring comrade, just the man for such a purpose, as he had seen been initiated into his master's secret from the beginning. Catesby considered it well before the formal commencement of the conspiracy that this latter, on account of his vitiating scruples of conscience, should be especially schooled by Jesuit Father Oswald Tesman, of whose hands he actually emerged as one of the most useful and active members of the plot. So, such were the men whom Catesby by degrees procured for his murderous plan, that is the Gunpowder Plot, without the commencement communicating to them, quote, the hour and when, withholding this for a later period. Okay, so I'm just gonna go to pull up the info on Guy Fawkes. Um, see here. This is talking here about back to Catesby, one of the Jesuit plotters. We can, said he, quote, get rid of the king in 100 different ways. But how would that help us where the Prince of Wales, his firstborn, the Duke of York, his second son, as well as his wife and daughter, be allowed to survive? Besides, were all these dead, there would still remain a parliament which would proceed against us with the most decided determination. There would also remain all the powerful lords and barons whom they placed themselves at the head of the Protestants. We could not for any length of time withstand. We can therefore only promise ourselves a sure and certain result when we remove out of the world the whole of the above mentioned people at one blow. In order to carry out such a great undertaking, it is indeed imperatively necessary for us to treat all as one man. You look at me with astonishment and ask how can it be possible to carry out such a great stroke? I reply that it is quite feasible in this way. We must this is the gunpowder plot, guys. We must form a large mine under the House of Parliament, fill it up with gunpowder. When then the Parliament is opened by the King, who always appears and accompanied by the whole of his family, we will set fire to the mine, and then His Majesty with the royal family, as well as the members of Parliament, will be buried under the ruins of the palace. Okay, so that was the plan. That's the Jesuit gunpowder plot plan. Okay, guys. I'll link this guy in the show notes too, because this guy was a big gunpowder plot here. Robert Catesby. You see here, Robert Catesby was a You see here, he led a group of provincial Catholics. He reverted to Catholicism. So this guy was that was from his words that I just read right there. So check out this guy's page. Um, Such was Catsby's plan, and assuredly never before had an idea so murder and so fearful entered into the human brain. From the hideousness of the thought, the deepest silence at first reigned among the 11 invited guests, and when Catsby ended, their deep breathing alone could be heard. This is the anonymous here. Guy Fawkes then rose, advanced towards Catsby with flaming eyes, and in silence firmly shook the right hand of the latter. So Guy Fawkes was the first Catholic to acknowledge this terrorist plot. Out of all the plotters. Several now did likewise as proof of their entire approval of the tremendous project, notwithstanding its enormity. Some, however, hesitated, as if the scruples of conscience had seized them, and one of them, Thomas Winter, ventured to give expression to those scruples in words, quote, "Among the lords of other members of Parliament," said he, quote, "there are several who belong to our own, the only saving faith, and the same is also the case with regard to the thousands of spectators which the spectacle of the opening of Parliament usually collects together. Many of those must, as a matter of course, also lose their lives on the blowing up of the palace. Dare we then perpetrate the great sin of slaying our own fellow believers, and without warning hurl them to destruction without their having any opportunity for confession and absolution?" Uh, Upon such a suggestion, Catesby seemed irresolute to say in reply, but the Father Provincial, that is Henry Garnet, the Jesuit, whose utterances were looked upon as oracular by all English Catholics, instantly took up the discussion and declared without hesitation that the scruples of Thomas Winter without the smallest justification. Quote from the Jesuit Henry Garnet: "There are always in a besieged fortress friends of the besiegers." End quote. And thus his explanation proceeded, quote, "Who suffer from the cannon, but do people leave from the firing on that account, and much less do they refrain from the storming? Catesby's plan then ought certainly to be accepted, as it would be, without doubt, most advantageous to the Catholic party, and by blowing up the Houses of Parliament, a much larger number of heretics than those of true believers would be destroyed. All therefore in common must be consigned to destruction." End quote. That was said by Jesuit priest Henry Garnet. Okay. um, So I'm just gonna go to more the next Guy Fawkes has mentioned. Okay. You see, the 10th and 11th of December 1605, the work was begun, and the 12 men did their utmost. So this is when they began to dig a mine underneath the Parliament to place the gunpowder. At length, on the night of the 10th and 11th of December, the work was begun, and the 12 men did their utmost, night and day, from this period, being relieved from time to time. They had, however, a difficult task before them, as the Parliament was to open on the 7th of February 1605. And if mine happened not to be ready, if the mine happened to be ready by that time, the whole undertaking would be a failure. Fortunately for them, the earth was of the garden, for the most part of light nature, and offered no great resistance to their picks and shovels. And another fortunate circumstance for them was that they were seldom disturbed in their operations by possible listeners from the outside. In spite of this, they were in sheer despair on the thought of having to abandon the whole thing when they came to the uncommonly hard foundation walls of the palace, the boring through of which was far more difficult than they previously had conceived. They now learned, however, to their unspeakable joy, that the opening of Parliament had been indefinitely postponed, and that it would not take place for several months. Therefore, they worked with renewed vigor, and about March, the 9 feet thick wall was broken through and reduced to a thin partition. But how they then proceed to remove this ladder? How should they then proceed to remove this ladder? When heaven and earth, what did they now hear? Loud voices on the other side, so that there was no doubt that the secret having been discovered. They instantly quitted the mine and betook themselves to their house to provide themselves with arms, as they were resolved to sell their lives as dearly as possible. Guys, this is back to the anonymous mask here, Guy Fawkes. Okay, you can pull up the mask again. These are the masks that Anonymous uses. Okay, it's named after Guy Fawkes. Okay, guys, a Catholic terrorist right here. Okay, alone Guy Fawkes, the most audacious and cold-blooded. Okay, guys, the anonymous representative was the most audacious and cold-blooded plotter of the Gunpowder Plot. Yeah, Casey. I don't know if you saw it earlier in the video. Yeah, so check this out. So I don't know if you're still watching, but the UN logo right here has the Roman reef underneath it, and the anonymous logo has the Roman reef underneath it right too. And then like I just think like the question mark right over the top of the head of the like the headless suit is just like telling you that the CIA and the Jesuits control Anonymous, because like they're saying we're not disclosing who we are. Why? Because we are the system. That's why, like, I noticed on their video feed, there's nothing on exposing the Roman system. There's nothing on exposing the accounting system. There's nothing exposing the corporate government. It's all fear porn, like that I see. And like they do push the reptile. Let's see here. Yeah, they push the reptilian agenda, the anonymous reptilian agenda, right here. Um, I've seen a few videos of them on the. Yeah, to me, anonymous is just like QAnon. Like they're just QAnon reveals Vatican Rothschild reptilian connection behind the deep state. Yeah, I don't know if you saw that, Casey, but here's the anonymous logo, Roman Reef, United Nations logo, Roman Reef, and the Georgetown University logo has the Roman Reef behind it too. And the Roman Reef's on so many other logos. Let me see if I can. That's like ocean seals. Um, well, look at this. Like coat arms of Germany is straight up like the square and compass, Masonic. That's funny. Yeah, here's the coat of arms of East Germany, deity East Germany, Roman Reef right there, just like anonymous. What is that? U.S. Industry of Utah. It's like the Roman fascia is everywhere. It's the same thing. Like even like the Roman fascia is at like Oxford University, like that right there. Yeah, actually, like I know you're talking about. Like, I don't know if you're still watching Casey. Like the golden fleece. Like I saw your comment about Aries. This is kind of like a symbol of like the golden fleece right here. The golden lion holding the Roman fascia at Oxford. FBI. Yeah, well, the FBI. I know the FBI was founded by Charles Bonaparte. Let me see if the Roman Reef's in their logo. I don't know. Oh yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. No, yeah, that's the Roman Reef coming out the bottom right there. It's like a. Yep. If you connect it, fidelity, bravery, integrity. Yeah, you make the connection. That's a Roman Reef, just like anonymous. That's funny, man. Like it's like symbolism. They tell you like in the symbolism. Like that's great. I didn't realize the FBI had the Roman Reef. And yeah, the FBI was founded by Charles Bonaparte, Roman Catholic, a descendant of Napoleon, who Napoleon famously signed a concordat with Pope Pius VII and had a papal coronation. Yeah, you see that? Yeah, the Roman Reef, and it has like the scales on top. I noticed like on the all pretty much every bar association logo I've seen, it has like the scales of Libra on it, which I find interesting. You see here, back to now, like only Guy Fawkes, the most audacious and cold-blooded, remained behind in the Gunpowder Plot and had the boldness to put his head through a hole which had already been made in the wall in order to see what was going on the other side. And what did he now see and hear? Certainly nothing to occasion anxiety, but on the contrary, something rather to make him rejoice. On the other side of the wall there was a large cellar which extended immensely under the great hall of the House of Lords. The cellar had just been rented by a dealer in coals and wood, but as the latter had just died, his heir was removing the goods in order not to be obliged to pay the rent any longer. Fox, of course, did not delay a moment in uh, relieving his fellow conspirators of the unnecessary anxiety, and they at once saw the great advantage from the fact now communicated to them. In truth, the benefit was immense. Um, So you see here, Percy, one of the Catholic plotters, was forthwith commissioned to hire the cellar and also purchase the whole supply of wood and coal from the heir. Percy soon brought this commission to a fortunate conclusion, and the conspirators possessed a large vault under the Chamber of Peers, into which they might convey as much gunpowder by means of their mine as they required without being remarked by anyone. This, in fact, they accomplished by degrees, introduced into the cellar no less than 63 casks filled with gunpowder, explosive material more than sufficient to blow up the Palace of Westminster and all its surroundings into the air. They covered over these casks so artfully with wood and coal and blunders of brushwood that no one would entertain any suspicion even if he had succeeded in inspecting the cellar without their knowledge. Besides, they constructed a wall of light brushwood right before the entrance into the mine in order to conceal this from the observation of the uninitiated, and so consequently it resulted in the frightful secret was well preserved. Uh, Um, Dude, I don't want to. I just want the video to go on too long. I recommend you read the whole chapter in Theodore Geisinger's book. I just want to bring out the connections to Guy Fawkes. Okay, right here. Give me a second. Okay. This is going into now how like they were eventually caught. Um, the rest is told. The alleged Johnson that very night. It was now 4 o'clock in the morning. Conducted to the royal palace, where a ministerial castle under the presidency of James the First was sitting, and a strict examination of the prisoner was instituted. He acknowledged the anonymous as Guy Fawkes to be his name, as also it was the intention to blow up the Palace of Westminster at the opening of Parliament. He exhibited no regret, but was furious, on the other hand, that his plan had not been successful. So you see here, like, you can remember that Protestant Reformation 207. I'm gonna check out your Casey, could you leave me a link to your if you got your WordPress site up? I would like to check out like I find your work interesting. You connecting astrology to the popes, because like the papacy does practice astrology. Like these guys are very esoteric in their nature. That's why they have that's why they wear like the Dagon fish hat. Like that's the same as like Vishnu. It has tons of other occult significance. Pope Leo X with the Protestant Reformation. That he was a pretty sure he was a Medici. Let me Yeah, they got Giovanni Lorenzo de Medici. Yeah, this guy was part of the Medici family. And the Medici family like set up or they're one of the players that set up like the modern banking system. Actually, I think Pope Leo X has this. There's a good quote here. Pretty sure this is Pope Leo X. Casey Joe. Okay, wait, I'll check that out. Yeah, because like the papacy definitely the papacy is knowing astrology is a influential in seeing like through the papal agenda, definitely. This is what Pope Leo X said here too, like just kind of mocking like the whole, kind of acknowledging that Christ is like an esoteric allegory, and like their use of the allegory as a corporate, literal religious story for the reaping the benefits of billions of dollars in ecclesiastical domination has served them well. And look at this, Pope Leo X. This myth of Christ has served us well. It has served us well. This myth of Christ. And the Medici Pope said that. But yeah, I think I'm gonna end the video there. I just gave you some context with Guy Fawkes. Read this whole chapter here with Theodore Geisinger on the Gunpowder Plot in England. Theodore Greisinger's book, The History of the Jesuits. I just didn't want the video to run on for over an hour. It's a long chapter. So here, Anonymous has it's in a symbolism, guys. Anonymous logo, Roman reef. Okay. United Nations has the Roman reef. Georgetown University has the Roman reef, and even now, like the FBI logo here has the Roman reef. And like there'll be many others, but it's in the symbolism, guys. Anonymous is working for the establishment, and that's why there's no videos exposing anything on their channel. Like if you're well read, if you understand how the corporate system works, if you know how the comprehensive annual financial report accounting system works, if you understand how the legal system works, if you understand how the ecclesiastical system works with the dioceses, how like there are every uh, literally every single like square mile square kilometer on the earth has been legally claimed under a archdiocese as well as being claimed by the states. But Anonymous doesn't tell you this, obviously, and that's why, because they work for the establishment and they put on the mask of this Catholic terrorist that I just gave you some context with. It was ultimately working for this Jesuit here, Henry Garnett. Okay, and yeah, thanks, Casey. I appreciate that. Was Chris Cornell was the is that the Lincoln Park guy? You know, to me that death smelled like a fake death, like a kind of like a hoax. But I'll look into the numbers with that. Actually, Casey, I don't know. I'm gonna end the video soon, but did you watch my video on Seth Rich? I think that was a clearly fake death. But it'd be interesting to see if Seth Rich has like any astrology connections like to his death. Yeah, he born Jewish, went to Jesuit Creighton. I just think that was a fake. I think that was a fake story to drive up support for Trump because Seth Rich, like they started saying that, oh, Seth Rich was part of the Hillary Clinton email scandal, and then like all the Trump supporters like were harping on uh, Hillary for the email scandal, and it actually drove up support for like the Jesuit candidate. But I think there could possibly be a astrology connection there. But yeah, I think I'm gonna end it with this video, man. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace and love, Namras.